Okay, so we're on Parsha, our Sefer Vayikra, the Book of Yayikra. Morning, Stu. Okay, on page 544. But I want to look back, keep the place on 544, and look back to the very end of Parshat Kitisa, page 514, for just a moment.
The end of Kitisa?
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're speaking about over here that there was this Keren or Panav, this radiant face of Moshe. Right? Verse 29. Okay, let's go from the very top. From 27. So want to take that for us?
ויאמר השם אל משה, טוב לך את הדברים האלה, כי על פי הדברים האלה קראתי איתך ברית בית ישראל. ויהי שם עם השם 40 יום ו40 לילה, לחם לא אכל ומים לא שתה, ויכתוב על הלוחות את דברי הברית 10 הדברים. ויהי ברד את משה מהר סיני, ושני לוחות העדות ביד משה, ברידתו מן ההר, משה לא ידע, כי קרן אור פניו ודברו איתו.
One more. Good. Let's take that now in English. Take a string. Stu, you want to lead off over there?
Sure. Hashem said to Moses, "Write these words for yourself, for according to these words have I sealed a covenant with you and Israel." He remained there with Hashem for 40 days and 40 nights. He did not eat bread, he did not drink water. And he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. When Moses descended from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the testimony in the hand of Moses as he descended from the mountain, Moses did not know that the skin of his face had become radiant when he had spoken to him. Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, and behold, the skin of his face had become radiant, and they feared to approach him.
Okay, so after Har Sinai, Moshe was aglow. Right? Sometimes you actually see, it's saying you've seen certain tzaddikim, and they seem to just have this glow to them. Moshe was aglow. Okay, we'll return to that in just a few moments. So now, Vayikra begins. Vayikra begins right after Shemot had ended. Shemot ended with the construction of the Mishkan, with Hashem's presence, God's presence, filling that Mishkan, filling that tabernacle. And now we have the Torah Kohanim, as it's called, the instructions for the Kohanim. We have the book of Vayikra, where we go in depth about all of the avoda, all of the service that took place in this Mishkan, and dealing primarily with the karbanot, with the sacrifices. In previous years, we spent time on the sacrifices, going through that. I just want to touch upon it just very briefly now, and then bring out some different concepts that we have in our Parsha, which I think are very relevant to us. In general, we have difficulty, I think we have difficulty with the idea of sacrifices, animal sacrifices. It's not something that we are comfortable with. It's not something that we find to be particularly inspiring, uplifting, spiritual. As we clearly say in our Musaf, in the davening of Musaf, which is on the days of Shabbos and Yom Tov, right? So there, where there were additional sacrifices, we have in its place an additional tefillah called Musaf. We do on Shabbos and Yom Tov. We speak about the Beit HaMikdash being reinstated and the karbanot, the sacrifices, being reinstated. And a point that I often make is that along with the reinstating of sacrifices, there will need to be a renewed understanding and appreciation of what the sacrifices are, what they mean, how they work, and how they, the spirituality of them. Because with our present understanding, I think it's pretty much a no-go. It's not something that's going to really uplift us. Very briefly, Ramban explains that the idea of a sacrifice is meant to be a very, very urgent wake-up call for a person. And we've given this example before, right? If as parents we have a teenager and we've given them the car and they are driving recklessly, all of a sudden you hear the screech of brakes and they just went 87 miles an hour as they came to a stop in front of your house. Right? So as a responsible parent, what do? You take away the keys. You take away the keys. So here we are. God has given us the car. The car is ourselves, our body, our life. And every moment God is the one who putting gas in the tank, paying the insurance. He's covering all the costs. He's the one who's giving us life every moment. If at a moment God sees, hey, we're utilizing this car in a way that it is dangerous to ourselves and to others, the responsible thing for God to do would be take away the keys.
Pull the plug.
Pull the plug. It's all over. God is what we call, in the 13 attributes, we speak about God being erech hapayim. He is patient. He is compassionate and he is patient. And he gives each and every one of us time. But it needs to be with a wake-up call, with a sense of, wow, what is it that I am doing? So Ramban explains that the sacrifices work in the following way, that it is the proxy. A person understands that the blood that's being sprinkled, the fat, the limbs that are on the altar really should be me. Right? It should be me.
Thank you.
Because God should be taking away the keys, pulling the plug. That should be me. And instead, right, but I'm offering this animal, so to speak, in my stead, but it's not just this voodoo that I brought an animal sacrifice and now everything's fine. It is meant to be a very, very intense, I'm sorry, just 1 second. I'm very sorry, I'm just giving a class right now. Can I call you back right afterwards? Thank you. It's supposed to be a very, very intense teshuvah process. Now, some of you might ask, well, what did the animal do wrong? Well, what did the animal do wrong? That's wonderful. You want to have this very, very intense point of introspection, of self-evaluation, of redirection. But what did the animal do wrong?
You're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And perhaps the question is, what did the animal do right? Okay. Because if we're looking, this goes back to discussions that we've had, right? Why do bad things happen to good people, right? What is the purpose of life? So if we recognize the purpose of life is a means, is an opportunity of growth, of self-actualization, then we understand that spending our life on a yacht without there being any issues, any challenges, that's not going to bring about self-actualization. So if life is meant to be a vacation, so we ask, so why are there difficulties? Right? When I go to Maui for a week, I don't want there to be hassles. I'm going there to relax and enjoy. I don't want there to be problems. But if life is meant to be, a course of self-actualization, of self-realization, so then I understand. Then I understand that there's going to be difficulties along the way. It's going to be difficulties along the way. And that is, now, if the purpose of life is to move ourselves forward in an eternal way, where do the non-humans fit in? Where do the non-humans fit in? All those other beings in the world. What are they here for?
To serve the human being.
To survive.
Or help us.
To help us.
To help us.
Right?
Well, to serve
Right?
us, to feed us.
Yes, in a way to serve us, right? Right? To teach us, to enable us. To enable us to go further and further. It's to enable us to go further and further. So now, how does an animal, you know, there was a movie, All Dogs Go to Heaven? How will an animal get, or perhaps get, or at least touch some aspect of eternity?
By nourishing us.
By helping, enabling us in our spirituality.
By being a sacrifice.
Well, by enabling us in our spirituality. Right? You know, I imagine a dog who is a devoted companion to a family and help them get through a difficult time and help them whatever it is. So that dog is enabling, is in a certain way uplifting human beings and helping them in their quest, in the odyssey, in the sojourn that they are sent upon. So that is how that animal is touching that aspect of eternity.
Look at this thing for Noah. He's
Right.
already saying he brings the alcohol to
Okay.
he's up there in the Alps.
Okay. Right? So, when we're looking at an animal, right? So the animal could be brought as a sacrifice, or it could live another 3 years, right? Eating grass, whatever it does, right? And then
That's it.
moving on, right? So, I think when we're viewing the world in such a way that it is an opportunity for mankind to get higher and get closer to God, and everything else is created as a prop for that, as something which enables. So an animal which enables us to do that in a very real way, I could hear that. Not what did the animal do wrong, but what did the animal do right? It had the opportunity to play a very active role in man's ascending to a higher level, and perhaps it will end up in heaven. I don't know. But it will have touched spirituality in a way that it never would have had it not been used for that. I know it's a different approach. I see some head shaking. Yes, Leah.
But the one big difference that an animal cannot do that a human can is an animal can't decide, today I'm going to be more
loving,
more loving, less loving.
That is why, that is where human beings are unique. Human beings are unique with our sense of morality and the free choice of morality.
Because, a dog is just so loving, and it doesn't matter if you yell at it, or even if he does something so dad. I mean, like my dog runs away, and as soon as he comes home, it's like, I'm so happy to see you, I've missed you, I'm so happy, and so like, he doesn't even realize he did something wrong. You know, I mean, he knows he did something wrong, but he's still beloved.
A dog is a dog.
So loving.
They say Kelev is K-Lev.
Like heart.
Leah, you here?
They love unconditionally,
Leah?
Rabbi. They don't
Leah, you here?
expect anything from
They
you.
are.
I know, but that's what I'm
Ray
saying.
doesn't
But they
have
can
it.
decide, they can say, today I'm going to be more loving, or today I'm going to run away. He doesn't decide that.
Kelev is K-Lev.
Yeah,
K,
could believe.
like a heart.
Can live like a heart.
Yeah, yeah. But where are you going with that, Leah? But where are you going with that, Leah?
No, that a human makes a decision. A
Right.
human can say, I'm going to be more good today, or I'm not going to, I don't feel like doing something. But a dog is just,
Yeah.
it's its natural
How do you know that?
state.
But who are we to decide which animal will go to sacrifice and end life in a cruel way? Or just
Well,
live another-
it's a
or just-
painless
or
way.
Or just live another 3 years, like humans.
Because
When-
someone has
when
to
God-
take charge
When
of
God
things.
decides
So,
that
Who's going to
that it's
decide?
our time to go, then God should decide when it's the time of this animal to go. And we make a decision for this animal either to go on the altar or
But
put in
everybody
a car.
so you're right and you're wrong, right? God tells us to do this.
Well,
Now, we have a command of Tsar Ba'alei Chayim, of not causing any anguish to animals. But we're allowed to eat an animal. We're allowed to wear garments, right, made from animals, but it needs to be done in a kindly fashion. But the understanding is that animals are not people too. That there is this structure of the world that mankind is given a certain purpose and is given a certain control over this world that we are supposed to utilize. You know, it's interesting to me that most people don't have a problem with animals being used for our physical needs. Right? No problem for some people do, but it's okay to wear It's okay to wear leather shoes. It's okay to eat fowl, to eat meat. So there's an appreciation that for our physical needs that we accept, but for spiritual needs, for some reason, there people feel the need to draw the line because, as I said before, we don't understand. Either we don't appreciate spiritual needs, right? Or we don't really wrap our heads around this whole idea of sacrifices and see how this really is spiritual. Okay? But I think it's important to note that the same people who will say, oh, sacrifice, that's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing, they're saying that as they're wearing leather shoes and eating a burger. Right? So I think it's important to note that.
That's not true.
Okay? That there are spiritual needs and there are physical needs. We are fully vested in our physical needs. When it comes to spiritual needs, now, chances are that same person who has a problem with karbanot will not have a problem with tefillin. Now, tefillin are made from animal, from leather. They will not have a problem with tefillin. But, I'm sorry? Or Torah, right? Good. The scrolls, good. The parchment, good point. They will not have a problem with that, right? So the problem is not really, how can you, right? The problem is that we don't understand, we don't appreciate karbanot. But we have no problems using animals for a Sefer Torah, for tefillin. We have no problems having animals for dinner tonight and for our leather shoes. So I think it's important to decouple to a degree and say, well, the problem really is that we don't wrap our heads around the sacrifices. Yes, and then,
I have
yeah.
a question. Like, are all the sacrifices for, like, aren't there like daily sacrifices that are?
Okay, good. So one of the questions that's asked on the Ramban, right? Ramban said that it's meant to be, right? They were supposed to realize that God should be taking away, right, pulling the plug on us, and instead, right, that should be us there, and therefore that is a very, very strong slap in the face, right? So one of the questions that's asked on Ramban, or points that's made by Ramban, is the sacrifices are not only for sin, right? But nevertheless, right, the sin I think is the most glaring example. But in general, we realize that we should be offering ourselves. That could or should be us. But you're right. The sacrifices do go beyond just the sins.
So I was thinking that's where I myself have the most problem, because it's almost like, does Hashem like relish these animals and the smell, and
Okay.
I don't understand this
So
at all.
yes. So again, it's clearly not that God needs the food, or God needs the fragrance, the smell, right? It is meant to affect us, and I'll explain a little bit further in a moment another approach. But I don't want to spend all the time on that because we've done that in passage. Janet was first.
So one thing, although there's some general specifications, unblemished and everything, maybe one of the things is that just like Yafia said, God specifically chooses X person and it's their time. We're just told to choose from the flock, not more specific guidelines of it's this one's time, or it's more random, like we're starting to play a little bit of Hashem in that we choose which among the flock.
So what's the question?
So,
But what makes us choose that one as opposed to that one?
exactly. So as Yafia says, it's sort of that decision is not left to Hashem. We're stepping into that role.
But we're commissioned to do that.
When you buy
We're
go
conditioned.
to market and buy chicken,
Right.
which one would you choose? The best one?
Yeah, Rachel.
Fashion, yes. I didn't know the parchment was made of skin. I thought it's
Hide, yes.
paper. It's,
No,
No,
it's made from.
wouldn't last so long.
Yeah, it's made from hide.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay, another approach, and I think this will be helpful. Our tefillah, our prayer, is called avoda, is called service. Right? We learned in the Navi class last night, Unishalma parim sifatenu. The last parak in Hosea says, and I will pay parim in the place of the bullocks. I will pay my lips. Right? Our tefillah is in the place of a korban. Maral explains that a korban is a complete giving over and recognition that everything is from Hashem. That this whole world is simply an illusion. It's this whole illusion that we live, but we don't really see what's here. Right? The Gemara says, when people gather to learn Torah, we're surrounded by angels every moment, every space. We're surrounded. Do we see it? Do we sense it? No. This whole world is an illusion. It is a creation of God's in order to allow us to have our opportunity for the growth, for the self-actualization that we mentioned before. Fire is fascinating. I think most of us are fascinated by fire. Fire is that touch point where that which is physical, that had some tangible reality to it, and it just goes up into smoke. It just dissipates. And the whole idea of karbanot is this understanding that everything is His. We are His, they are His, everything is God's. Everything is part of this stage that is set for us. And the korban is these elements just going back, and there's wood, right? There's all of these elements just going back to their source, to where they came from, to who and what they really are. That this whole physicality that surrounds us is all just a creation. It's just an illusion. It's just something that is here for the stage set for us, but there is no reality to that. I like to give an example. There was a Robin Williams movie called, it's a kid's movie, I think Jumanji, right? And Jumanji, right? And the idea is that, and the movie struck me as fascinating because I had a dream like this when I was a kid.
Nice to realize that you watch movies.
Huh? Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, my kids certainly do, right? I had a dream when I was a kid that I was reading through this book about dinosaurs, but if I would open a certain page, then I went back, right, into that time. Right? And Jumanji, basically, they're playing a board game, and if you land on certain places, all these things happen. Right? And there's a flood, and there's wild animals, and all these things happen. But it's all a game. It's all an illusion. And then finally, he lands in the right place, and they all disappear. They all go back, right? And the world is back where it was. And all that was surrounding him, and all of that was just an illusion. And that's what I think about by this idea of a korban. A korban is recognizing la briyut, this illusion, and setting everything back in its place, recognizing that all that we do, all that around us, it's a stage that is set. And with that, and then I want to try to get back to what I want to talk about today. With that, we can understand a little bit the idea that tefillah is avoda. The pasuk says, "Ula avdon," to serve God with all of your heart. Tefillah, prayer, is service. The pasuk says, "Ula avdo," and serve. We say it in the Shema. Ula avdo b'chol levavchem, and to serve Him with all of our heart. The Gemara says, how do we serve God with our heart? That is tefillah. That is prayer. Now, tefillah seems to be, God, give a refuah shalema. God, please grant a complete healing to this person. God, let this surgery go well. God, let me get this job. God, let my children do well. It seems to be not so much we're serving God, but we're asking God to serve us. Right? And in our weekday Shmona Esrei, our weekday Amida, we have 13 blessings in the middle, three at the beginning, 3 at the end, and 13 in the middle, which are the bakashot, they are the requests that we're asking. Atachoni ladandas, give us wisdom, heal us. Barech aleinu, give us a parnasa, give us good sustenance. Good health. So it doesn't seem to be us serving God. It seems to be our asking, petitioning God to serve us. So how is tefillah? How is prayer service? But according to the Maharal, we understand a bit. Tefillah is laying it all before God and saying, I can't do a thing. It's all your control. It's all yours. If we're placing it all before God, then we are recognizing that we can't do anything. That it's all in your hands. We'll make our efforts. And we have to make our efforts. I was talking to someone, actually, let's learn that someone's undergoing a surgery right now. Zelda Bat Esther is undergoing a surgery right now. So this person whose daughter is undergoing the surgery said to me last night, he said, but we have the best doctor. I said, that's fantastic. I said, he should be a good shaliach. Shaliach is someone that we send as a representative, right? He should be God's good shaliach, God's good representative. We have to find the best doctor. We have to understand that the best doctor Sometimes does well and other times messes up. And ultimately it's in God's hands. So our asking God for our health and for all these things, really at its core is this avoda, it is this service of laying it all before God and saying, hey, I walk around, I do what I do over here, but ultimately it is all you. Ein od milvado. There's nothing else besides your will and what you want to come about. And that's what tefillah is meant to be. And it's interesting because the tefillah, we said, has the first 3 brachot, which is praises to God. Then we have the bakashot, the requests. And then we have the thanks that we give, the hoda'ah. So on a simple level, right, so we are praising God, not to butter God up before we ask Him things, but for us to appreciate before whom we are standing when we make our requests. Then we make our requests, and what is the thanks for? Do we know if our requests have been granted?
No.
Right? So what is the thanks for?
For what we have.
The thanks are for what we have and for the relationship that we have hopefully built through the tefillah until this point. Because the idea of the tefillah is not a gimme wish list, but it is appreciation of the opportunity and the relationship that we build. Dov and then Leah.
Okay, quickly. So the world is bent upon destroying things how they want to destroy things.
What?
The world is, they have it,
What they?
the world in general. They want to destroy things how they want to destroy things. You want to destroy a cup, whatever, you destroy it, right? Hashem says, here's a divine commandment to destroy things how I want them destroyed.
I wouldn't look at I wouldn't look at it as destroying something, though. I would not look at it as destroying something, though. Leah.
2 things made what you said now made me think about what you said last lesson about the smoke, that the animal goes up in smoke, and then you were talking about how the smoke came down from the mountain and the smoke came down on in the Mishkan, and here's again now our smoke going up.
Our offerings to Hashem.
Yeah. And then the other thing that what you just said also is the 18 blessings. And remember last week you were saying Kasher Tzivat Nakal Moses.
Kasher Tziva Hashem et Moshe.
Exactly how Hashem asked us to do it. I mean, commanded Moshe to do it.
Right.
You said you didn't know how many times it was written. So I was listening to a lecture.
18.
It's 19. 19 times. But the first time is not counted because, I don't know, there's something different about the wording for the first one. So it is 18. And the 18 on the 18 blessings of Amidah. So it's all
interesting.
And then you said Avodah.
Oh, it's interesting. Actually, we have 19. So there's actually there's like a swing bracha because another bracha was added in.
Yeah.
Right, so it's interesting.
and actually, the first one, it's saying to. There's something different about the very first time when he says kasher. I think he said it to Betzalel, not to Moses. And then the others are
kasher Tziva Hashem et Moshe.
To
nice.
Moshe. So, but it's unbelievable. They always say that the whole Torah is like one.
It all fits.
Just like one thing.
It all fits.
But it's like DNA. It's in every cell. The whole formula, the whole Torah is in every single cell. So every word is in the whole Torah. I mean, the Torah is in every word. It's quite unbelievable.
Nice.
So, but is there any malacha that is not avodah? I mean, the only thing that we do malacha is creative work, is what we do to build things.
Right.
Avodah is tefillah. I mean, does it ever say
Oh. See, avoda can mean actual work. Let's say we're discussing the laws of Shabbos. So you have malacha, which is the creative activity from which we desist on Shabbos, and avoda. If I want to carry my couch around the house, right, I'm allowed to on Shabbos, right? That their avoda awfully means work, right? In the context of the Mishkan, avoda is the service.
So, and we have to do avodah on Shabbat.
The avoda is done on Shabbos.
But not
that avoda. Correct. Okay, let's come back over here and start Vayikra. Okay?
Yeah.
With that introduction in place.
You know what's so interesting, Rabbi?
Yes.
That these are the laws, and the prayers is our service, but it all must be with our heart.
Yeah. Ulavda b'chol levavcha.
And you know, I sometimes get caught up in all these laws, but I think the purpose is to bring it into every part of our mundane daily
Yes.
life and bring our heart connected to Hashem in every part.
100%. 100%. The purpose, you know, I gave a talk yesterday about the purpose of the Torah mitzvot, and that is to give us this constant connection to Hashem, right? Yeah, the karbanot, right, has to be accompanied with the teshuvah, and all that we're doing, right? Unfortunately, the challenge that we have as human beings is that it's easier to do something than to have that focus, and sometimes we can go through a whole davening without really thinking about God. You know, and
Because it becomes mechanical.
yeah,
rather than,
yeah, and that's the real challenge. That's the real challenge, right? But as he's saying, I mean, as opposed to "U'la'avda b'chol levavcha," and it's serving Hashem with all of the heart, right? And this is meant to be focusing the heart and getting us aligned the way we're supposed to be aligned. Yeah. Vayikra El Moshe. Chayef, you want to lead off for us in the first pasuk on page 544? In Hebrew. In Hebrew.
Oh gosh. Vayikra El Moshe v'yidaber Adonai elev me'ochel moed lemor.
Good. Vayikra El Moshe. Now everybody, even following in the English, look in the Hebrew over there. And he called to Moses, and Hashem spoke to him in the tent of meeting, saying, Vayikra, the little, right, the aleph is written small in every Torah. Okay, the aleph is actually written small in the Torah. Why is that? So the Baal HaTurim explains that Moshe wanted to leave out that aleph. Moshe wanted it to read Vayikar, right? Vayikar is Lashon Mikra, that God happened to encounter, as opposed to, right, you can call someone, right, and when you call someone there is a certain endearing aspect that you're reaching out, you're calling out to that person, and you could bump into that person. Oh, hi, how you doing? How you been? Right? As opposed to taking out the time to call that person. Moshe wanted it to be written Vayikar, which means Lashon Mikra, God happened to encounter, or came to him in a dream, as opposed to a real calling out. Hashem said, you've got to write that aleph. So Moshe then said, but let me write it small. So this is the humility that we see of Moshe. And there's a medrash that says that Keren Or, that illuminating light, that beam of light that we began with, that Moshe had, that was from the leftover ink. The leftover ink of a little aleph. Okay? Even though the medrash I think has to be understood metaphorically, because Moshe did not come down the mountain with Sefer Vayikra written, right? But metaphorically, it was the humility of Moshe which created that glow, that brilliance that he had, right? Vayikra El Moshe. So Moshe had that humility to him.
Basically, the way it's written, it's always because he's actually been close to Hashem, and Hashem's glory has sort of reflected off him. That's always what I get rather than humility.
Yes. Yes, but what allows Hashem's glory to reflect off of a person? Their humility, right? If I am, Mr. If I am Mr. Great, so then I'm not a reflection of God. I've got my own, quote unquote, brilliance.
Also, from an artistic point of view, Torah, it has white spaces and black spaces. The black spaces are, to me, the form. The white spaces are the spaces. And if you have more space, more white spaces, it's more of a spiritual nature to have more white spaces. And a little olive would therefore mean it's of a spiritual nature.
It's a diminishing of oneself to give more space.
To the
Beautiful.
spiritual.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Let's take Pasuk 2. Let's take that first in Hebrew. Someone try that in Hebrew? Marta, go for it.
דבר בני ישראל, אמרת עליהם, אדם כי יקריב מכם, קרבן לשם מן הבהמה, מן הבקר, מן הצאן, תקריבו את קרבנכם.
Beautiful. In English, somebody take that?
He called to Moses, and Hashem spoke to him from the tent of the meeting, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when a man among you brings an offering to Hashem from animals, from cattle or from the flock shall you bring your offering."
Good. Adam, ki yakriv mikem korban. When a man amongst you, a person amongst you, brings a korban to Hashem. Now, hold the place here and turn to page 560. Verse 27. 560, 561. There it says, V'im nefesh achat techete bishgaga. Right? The English says, if an individual person from among the people of the land shall sin unintentionally. Here we describe a person as a nefesh. What is a nefesh?
Soul.
A soul. And back over here in 544, we describe the person as Adam, a person. Now, we understand that a person is a composite of the Adama, of the physical, and of the spiritual. Right? From the earth, that's the Adama, and the Nefesh is that Spirit of God that is blown into us. Now, isn't it strange that when we're talking about sinning, on page 560, how are we describing the person? A soul sins. And we're talking about bringing a korban, bringing a sacrifice, which is a spiritually uplifting and uplifted act. Who's doing it? Adam. It would seem to make more sense to say, if an Adam sins, and a nefesh when he brings that sacrifice. Why is it seem to be reversed over here? It seems to be the opposite of what we would have expected it to be. But I think let's understand for a minute. A person is called Adam, right? If we go back to Bereshit, we also have a problem. By the creation, I'll find it in a minute. By the creation of man.
When you're saying Adam, I'm looking only at the English version. You mean person.
Yeah.
I also think it harkens back to what you said, that if someone brings, personally, it's partially a physical reminder that every day their goof could go. When you say if a man, so it's a reminder that we could be taken physically every day as well.
Okay.
Whereas if you are specifically thinking of bringing it for specific sin, you know that there's been a dent or a glitch on your neshama.
Okay, we'll come back around to that. Just 1 second.
I was thinking
Yeah.
Just one
it's
second.
human to make mistakes. So God, well, he sees all. He wants to see the goodness, and a soul is perfect. So you can.
The soul is not perfect. The soul is perfect.
It starts perfect.
Yeah.
A soul is a piece of God, so it's gotta be good.
So even if you make a sin, it
Yeah,
can
but if you
ultimately
sin-
get back to being perfect.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
You
that's
can
a
fix that.
I think the body's not good.
Right.
The soul.
Body.
Right.
The soul.
Right. So Adam.
The soul,
That's why they
Say
find,
Adam, a
the
person.
soul is perfect.
that's why the person, when they go through Shemayim, they go through a process of cleansing, because
So it's not.
although the soul is still pure, I believe it has been tainted because it hasn't been involved in human activity, and so they have a cleansing period in Shemayim where the soul is cleaned. It's cleaned. It's like a dirty pot. The pot is clean, but on
Yeah.
top it has some schmutz.
From its
So you
involvement. Yeah.
clean it
So
off.
why is the perfect soul even comes to this earth? There is nothing to work on. If it's perfect,
Right.
it doesn't belong here.
So, in its perfect state, in spiritual state, there is no potential for growth, right?
Yeah.
Like an angel,
So that's
right?
that's what-
It's only by coming down into this world and joining up with the partner, with the Adam, with the physical body, and thereby facing these challenges together, and hopefully making the good choices.
That's exactly
Right?
what I mean. That none
Right.
of our souls, even the baby's soul, newborn, is perfect because it doesn't belong here.
Because
in
it's
this earth.
untainted.
Well,
It's
a
inexperienced.
baby's is untainted.
Right.
Over the course of a lifetime, hopefully we've
Yes.
done some
How come
elevation.
it's
We've also
untainted? What's the purpose of it to come down on this earth?
the challenges that it will have, but it doesn't really have many challenges when it's a newborn,
Sometimes.
right? Yeah, that's true. That's
Formed
true.
like a blank slate.
That's true.
Because
It-
it might be their purpose is only for
100%.
2 minutes for 6 months.
100%.
So we
100%.
can't judge those purposes, but we do know that we have to, the soul has to come here in order to do whatever
experience.
work is supposed
Yeah.
to be done here.
Yeah,
Here,
that's a
to
good
get
point,
to that
Alan.
ultimate place.
Yeah,
Correct.
I was saying it's not making any of these moral decisions,
No.
but it is going through different experiences. Even we say even a miscarriage is a soul that needed to be involved in this world for that period of time, for whatever it is. Yeah. So if you take you have to turn the page. In page back in Bereshit, it says God created Adam, man, afar, earth, dust from the ground, and blew ba'apav into his nose and nishmat chayim, and Adam became a nefesh chaya, and this Adam became a living being. But we are called an Adam.
It's the same Adam, though, right?
Yeah, we are called an Adam. Right? We're not called a nefesh. We're called an Adam.
Because we have a physical
Because
body.
we're
Right?
blended.
But why is that the main focus of what our name is? I think, right, in Israel you have people, that call the kids, neshamala, neshamala. Right? Little precious soul, little soul. Right? Are we in our essence, are we best described as an Adam? Or are we best described as a nefesh? Right? So why do we choose the term Adam?
But even in the word Adam, we are both. Because Aleph is God, and Dan
Okay.
is blood.
Yeah, we've gone through that. Yeah. Okay. So the Maharal says very beautifully that Adama has an amazing characteristic. Earth has a characteristic that it supports growth. It enables growth. You have a certain, you can measure the weight and the volume of this earth, and you throw in some seeds, and then this fantastic tree grows, and the earth hasn't, right? It somehow has gone through this transformation, right, from seed and earth into apples. Earth has this transformational capacity. And that is why we are called by the name Adam. Right? We have that transformational capacity. Another idea is Adama. Actually, those letters, Aleph, Dalet, Mem, Hey, can spell Adama, also spells Adameh.
Which means?
I will be similar to. I will emulate. And the purpose of mankind is this Adameh, that I will become similar by the choices that we make. So coming back to this. Adam ki akriv mikem korban, and a nefesh ki techeta. A person, an Adam when he brings a korban, and a nefesh, a soul when he sins. So Rav Leib Chasman in the Or Yahel explained so beautifully that we have to realize that we are this composite. We are these strange bedfellows. And understand that when we sin, we're taking that lofty nefesh and we're dragging it down. And when we do an act of spirituality, what happens? That Adam goes through the Adameh, through that reflection, and it goes through that transformation, and becomes elevated. A neighbor of mine in Israel, Zichrono Livracha, I mentioned the story before. His name was Rav Shifrin. He was an older man. When I was in Israel, I was young. I was in my early 20s. He was a neighbor of mine. He was already a man up in his 70s, if not 80s. His brother was one of 4 people who were tasked with digging up the burial place of the Vilna Gaon and reinterring and moving the body from where it was buried, because the government there was building a highway that was going to go right through the cemetery there. So he and 3 others, Rav Shifrin's brother and 3 others were, I don't know why they were chosen to have that task.
There's a plaque up with their name on it.
Oh yeah? Over there.
Yes.
Well, they fasted, they prepared themselves for this task. And this I heard from the brother of the person who did it. They said when they got to the kever and they opened it up, right, it already decomposed everything, the kever, the grave had decomposed. They said the Vilna Gaon was lying there with rosy cheeks, like a person who had laid down to take an afternoon nap. They reburied the body, and none of those 4 people lived that much longer.
Despite that?
So we might go back to what we started with. What did they do wrong? Or we might say, what did they do right?
And they tell that story on your birthday.
Oh yeah? So I heard the story from the brother of the person, right? What did they do right? If this world is meant to be a place of growth, actualization, of Adamah, of transformation, of Adamah, of getting close to God, then at a certain point, when the time is up, then a person moves on to the next stage. Right? When you're playing certain lahav, you're playing certain games, right? Or you might be stuck at a certain level for a really long time, or you might have mastered that level and accomplished what needed to be accomplished on that level and have gone on to the next stage. And I don't know if the question is what did they do wrong. I think the question is what did they do right. That at that point they were able to move on to that ultimate stage. So the Or Yahel, though, is very important. The nefesh Nefesh ki techeta. A nefesh, if it sins, it's the soul that sins. It's bringing it down. And the body could be elevated to a point. The body can be elevated to the point that it itself doesn't even go through the normal process of a body after death. Adam kiyach became korban la'Hashem. The Adam can bring about, the Adam can be uplifted to bring that korban. I should have mentioned, the root of the word korban is kuf reish bet, which is karov, which is close. So again, we have problems. I have problems. I think we all have problems with this idea of sacrifice. But at its core, what it brought about was a tremendous karav, a tremendous closeness and connection with Hashem, which is of course what tefillah is meant to bring about.
So, I get it. Someone could have done finally everything right and been on that threshold, but in the case of, for example, Rav Shifrin's family and the other people, if they were relatively young, maybe they had younger children whose needed something.
You know something? That's God's cheshbon.
You can't answer that.
That's God's calculation. Look, I mean, in my head, how do I wrap my head around this? Right? That the path for me in life needed to be that I would lose my mother at a very young age. So therefore, my neshama was given.
You're sweet, Rabbi.
Gosh. Right? So my neshama was granted to a wonderful woman who was not meant, who did not need to have 70, 80, 90 years on earth, but needed to have the 45 years here on earth. Right? So it's not, but now they're going to lose that. That's all part of the master plan calculation of each and every one of us and that which we are, the environment that we are given, and the potential growth that we have from the particular environment that we are given. Whether that's the environment in terms of the parents that we had or didn't have for however long we had them, or the children that we have, or the siblings that we have, or the community, right? All of that is part of this master plan to create that environment for us.
Here's a scary thought. So we live longer today than we used to. Is that because God feels we need more time?
Perhaps.
Are we going the wrong direction?
Perhaps. Perhaps.
Rabbi, can I just say something?
Yes.
Excuse me. Last week, Janet gave me a beautiful condolence card. Most of the people signed the card, and I want to thank everyone who beautiful thoughts that were on the card. Secondly, next week I have a doctor's appointment, and then I'm going to Israel for Pesach, so I won't be here for a while. I would like to wish everyone a wonderful Pesach.
Thank you. Safe trip and enjoy his children and
great grandchildren.